not everyone has the opportunity to be in the Philosophy Club YouTube channel. No, you heard not. It is official now. It is on. Um, should I just really kick off this meeting?
Yeah, let's do it. And
All right.
I want some, I need to make some announcements as well at the beginning.
Of course. Even more with tomorrow's event, we need to. All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Ferdinando Castro Gonzalez. We're missing one officer, but we still have Orlando, sadly, and our advisor here, Jan Nancy, to direct the conversation today, which is media and truth. A little bit of salt from the one and only Orlando. Thank you so much for your contribution to today's meeting. I'm gonna just explain a little bit the house rules for those who are new. Normally, the way we go is that we try to have some type of organization to know who is going to be speaking first or last. And normally, what we do, and if you have access to the chat, you were able to see this. And if you don't know how to get the chat, please let me know. Normally, we do is we just type an exclamation mark, so that way it is registered, and we go with the first exclamation mark, and so on, so on. If you raise your hand, I'm gonna have to ask you to go to the chat and do it because it will be hard for me to know who is first and who is last. This is an informal conversation, so do not feel too pressed. Nobody's judging you. This is just a free environment for us to explore the ideas, which is up to today on the theme of truth. So let's try to explore all of it. With that being said, I will give them my floor to Nancy so you can kick off those announcements and then we'll start.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, everybody. Thanks to everybody who came out for last week's conversation. That was a lot of fun as well. And yeah, we are wrapping up our monthly theme of truth. So again, we did reality the first month. This was truth. And then we'll be moving on to another topic next week. So having said that, we like to coincide the conclusion of topics or monthly themes with the film. So the second installment in the Philosophy and Film series is happening tomorrow. We'll be watching a documentary called Food Inc. It's a little over 10 years old, but again, it has to do with, I would say, topics that will circle around today's discussion, which is, again, media and truth, how to convey truth, things along these lines, how to receive truth as it's being presented to you, etc. So please come out for that. We'll be opening up this room at 4 o'clock. The screening will begin at 4:30. It'll conclude around 6 o'clock, maybe 6:15, and then we'll chat for half an hour, something like that. They're a lot of fun. You can look at the previous film chats on YouTube. Go to our YouTube channel. We're up there. 10 semesters worth of episodes. Not too shabby. And of course, we're on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. Come find us. And then we have our website as well. All things Dallas College Philosophy Club related. Awesome.
We have a special reward for those who watch all the videos in one sitting. Yes.
I'll say this. Just, you know. I'll say this too. Anybody who's taking me for ethics class this semester, tomorrow's movie will deal directly with material that we'll be looking at later on in the semester. So you can get something of a head start on the coursework as well. And of course, shout out to, we have a special guest today, Professor Hunsinger from Eastfield College is hanging out with us.
Hi, everybody.
Nice so that's a new
Happy
face.
to join you.
It's time to figure it out. Thank you for coming.
All right, let's get started.
Okay, and Isidora seems to be enjoying the movie for tomorrow already. She likes that. All right. Ooh. Okay, let's get this started. So, again, I apologize for the confusion with the email, but if you read it, you will see that we're trying to explore a little bit of how media affects our perception of truth and whether or not it affects even those who are not too much into media. That's essentially the worst summary I can think of. Okay, so in my case, of course, I believe that it is. Oh, I see somebody's texting. Okay. I mean, for me, at least for me, in my opinion, media right now represent a huge amount of information that we're perceiving from the outside, even right now with the whole coronavirus and things like that. So our truth is being highly dependent on what we're looking through media. So I'm concerned, and oh, look at that. That's what I love. I'm concerned that most people are looking just to base their truth on media only without doing proper research or without exploring more the subject, because it seems like it is the easier way to start having some grasp of what is happening in our environment. But I will give my floor now to Menzi.
Yeah, no, I like how you set up the question, Fernando. I was just going to do something similar, try to consider different, I guess, approaches we could take on the topic. Because again, this was a student topic. It wasn't one of the topics that we decided on prior to the semester beginning. And again, if you're curious about the topics, you go to the files section of this Teams page, and you click on the attachment that says, again, Spring 2021 schedule, and you'll see the weekly topics from now until the end of the semester, as well as when we're having the conference and when we're having the film series next. So yeah, take a look at that as well. At any rate, yeah, I mean, one of the angles that we could consider looking at is, I suppose, especially considering the last couple of topics earlier this month, what constitutes truth? And what is the role that media plays in literally building a truth and presenting it in such a way that it's going to be widely accepted? Is that, in fact, kind of the way that truth functions? Is it something that is, again, it gets contrived, it gets derived from certain events, but nonetheless, there's an intentional, perhaps, narrative placed upon it in such a way that is, on the one hand, helpful to those who are, again, interested in it and want to receive it and understand it, but at the same time, perhaps agenda driven or something along these lines. So these might be some different approaches we take as well. And again, if you'd like to only talk in the chat, feel free to include your comments in the chat and we'll respond to you. Or if you'd like to speak out loud, put an exclamation mark and it'll be your turn. Thanks.
Thank you. Next in line will be Efrain.
Hey y'all. Okay, so what I wanted to say is that you know, I think our media is now so like it's so encompassing really that and everyone pretty much like 80, 90 say in some way. You know, for older people it might be cable news, and for younger people it's probably like, you know, like social media of some sort. But everyone, pretty much like almost everyone I meet is pretty much inundated with media, whether indirect or directly, somehow they're inundated with it. And what I've noticed is that if something doesn't happen or if something isn't reported in the media, then it doesn't happen. It happens, but it doesn't happen in the society, or it doesn't happen in people's minds. They don't register that it happens. The media covers a lot about, you know, like COVID deaths, and you know, the U.S. I just looked the numbers up. In 2020, there was about a little over 500,000 COVID deaths. But at the same time, in 2020, there was about a 30% rise in homicides, and there was about also a huge rise in the amount of overdoses and things like that. But because the media doesn't really talk about that, or they hardly spend any time on that if they ever do, then it doesn't people, you know, overdoses, and that there's a huge increase in murder that a lot of people are dying over, especially in some of these big cities. Are having like 50%, you know, almost like double or like, you know, a quarter increase in the amount of people who are dying in their cities, which is very significant. It's very much an anomaly and very much something that it's an interesting thing that's happening, but people don't really cover that. So it just seems like if something doesn't happen on the media, then people just don't realize that it happens, and to them it just never happens whatsoever. It seems like our perception of what actually happens in society isn't the things that we see with our own eyes or our senses. It's only the things that happen, you know, whatever Fox News, CNN, or whatever your little pop-ups on, you know, news headlines on Twitter say. It's no longer what actually happens. It's just what the media says happens. And I'll leave the floor to someone else.
Oh, okay. Thank you. It's so humble. All right. Yeah, but you do pose very interesting questions, which is also kind of like trying to. I'm gonna start throwing some like ideas out here in case if somebody else wants to also like catch them and expand on them, because if we're going into a situation where like what is actually happening is not what is being said, and we're considering this as our primary resource for information. Like, of course, for those who are studying ethics, then there should be some way of exposing, or at the very least informing all these occurrences ethically, right? There should be some type of responsibility from those who are like exposing all these truth, because I mean, I don't want to do a specific, but what you're being said, if constantly is exposed in different outlets, could, I mean, it will have repercussions, because people are going to base their decisions, they're going to base their actions on what they're seeing. And in a time where we mostly are encouraged to be at home for our own safety, it's even harder to assess what type of information is actually truth. I have one question. For those who are saying A with exclamation mark, is that exclamation mark like an actual try to like talk, or it's just like a hey? Because I'm not completely sure. And this is for Dylan, mostly. Are you trying to speak with that hey? I'm gonna take that as a no.
I think he was
Okay.
just just
Okay.
grading us. Yeah, see?
Yeah, okay. Okay, so Mansi, you're next.
Yeah, I mean, I like yeah, sorry to put you on the spot, Dylan. It's all good. Yeah, I like everything that that I'm hearing right now. I think these are all really compelling topics and issues we could really dive into. Yeah, I definitely think there's something, especially to this idea of the role of social media. So social media in particular, in sort of, again, presenting truth in such a way where it's almost like it's ranking the events as they transpire globally, nationally, whatever the case may be, locally. And that's kind of how one gets a sense of, you know, just how valuable a piece of information this is, or how urgent it is. It's the way, or the success to which it proliferates across all these different social media platforms. That's sort of indicative, it would seem, of the general consensus of, you know, the truth of something's value, whatever the story might be. And I think you see that reflected in people who tend to do a good job of documenting on social media events as they're happening in front of them in real time, almost to say like, well, now this is proof that this is happening, as opposed to, you know, merely experiencing it. Like the documenting of it and then the advertising of it or the showcasing of it on social media seems to play a formative role in capturing what it is that happened, the truth of what happened. And if somebody's there as an eyewitness, again, it's further evidence.
Yeah, but I do want to maybe expand a little bit more on it, Mansi, because I believe that media is not something new. I mean, at least in my thought, it's not just like virtual media. We also have like the press. Even sometimes the different, like when someone was on a horse, like yeehaw, and just like shouting it to the door, like this is happening. It doesn't necessarily was that what's happening, but there's some sort of media because you're informing people of something that they're not necessarily seeing. So I think that this is not a new topic, but it has been used to kind of like give direction to the society, or where maybe something trying to go. It's just kind of like not enfrasqued, if that's even an English word, into today's. Is it conundrum the right word in this? I don't know, but in today's, like, you know, issues. All right, so Orlando, you're next.
All right, I guess I'm gonna have to do a a 180 here since people saying I'm throwing salt.
Always.
But I think when we talk about the media, we always kind of emphasize the role of how important a lot of these journalists, these news figures sort of play in our society. If you really think about what media really is, I mean, can't we consider books media? Can't we consider all these different kinds of means of understanding knowledge media? Because they, to some extent, textbooks, to some extent, even curriculum, hold certain biases or certain aspects of history that we might not have the full picture of. And often when we're looking at news, we kind of tend to criticize them for that reason. I mean, I think when it comes to things like media, when you're looking at commercials of like these crazy beer commercials, these crazy pharmaceutical commercials, the news being sensationalized, that we want to like make it seem as if it's more dangerous than what's really going on, or we're just not highlighting things that aren't preferable. I think the media in this sense is reflective of the culture. They do it for a reason because they know that it's appealing to the audience. To some extent, it's similar to like our political government, that we need to hold the media accountable. People need to be knowledgeable about what's going on and what really matters and is prioritized. And I say it's reflective of our culture because in that same sense, a lot of people only pay attention. They only click on certain things with big pop-ups, clickbait. They only look at certain news sites because it's agreeable or it's sensationalized. And so to some extent, we can't always just necessarily blame the media, although they do seem to be the bad actors. To some extent, we have to kind of have some influence around us and say, hey, you guys need to do more research. Hey, you guys need to understand that the media isn't necessarily just independent like that. But I guess that's all my piece right now. Hopefully that was no salt there. Hopefully I put some chili out there for you, Fernando.
Yeah, there is always a sauce in there. Yeah, I mean, anyways, I'm not gonna, but I will expand on something that you said, because there's also not always it's just like, for example, let's say the writer. Sometimes the writer wants to say something that is true, but the people who is paying is forcing not to. So like, I understand the whole purpose of what you're saying. It's just, it is complicated, but we have been taking this as our outlet for truth. But you mentioned that they don't necessarily use it for that purpose, but it's to get an agenda. So should we then start to challenge the idea of a media being a source of information, or it's just a venue for selling commodities that you may want to buy or something?
Well, the interesting thing is, I'm sorry to kind of butt in again, but I think the
That's
interesting
okay.
thing is like we are kind of doing that, but then we're kind of not. And the way I say that is that, like, a lot of YouTube podcast media and like news media, they call it kind of new age media is what they're kind of more referred to as. They're kind of being more looked at because people are kind of sick of the CNN, the Foxes of the world, of like there's certain business models where basically they're just sensationalizing agendas and making sides. And so people are kind of looking to different mediums, and like these podcasts and these different kind of talk show hosts are kind of becoming that. But the bad thing is that YouTube and even some podcast platforms are starting to kind of censor them a little bit. I don't necessarily agree with the censorship of them, or like they're demonetizing them. And so when we're moving in the right direction, it seems that corporatism kind of shifts it back. So it's like anytime we find a different medium, a different road, a different path for us to kind of get away from this model of sensationalism, we always get scooted back by somehow, some way.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to expand too much on it because we have people in the queue. So it's your turn, Isra. Oh, was I muted?
All right.
No,
It takes me a second. I'm slow.
yeah, I know.
Okay, so I've been listening and I've been thinking, and I would say that I want to explore a bit more on what Fernando said in terms of where the idea of media generated in the first place. Because back in the old days, when there was no internet, it was just a village or a group full of people who had news to share, that, oh, the so-and-so had a baby, or, oh, so-and-so's father died, and so on and so forth. That is still news, right? And that is still truth, because you're basically spreading awareness in terms of this event happened, and we're broadcasting it so that just in case you don't know, you have that information. So if we look at it, how we've evolved, and we see how we've been more globally connected, it's just now there's a news overwhelm in terms of, okay, everything is happening simultaneously, and there's only so much attention people have to give. So now it's become a priority of, okay, let's make it more attention grabbing. Let's make it more edgy. Let's make it more controversial so that our story is the top news, basically. In that regard, it's more, it's kind of deviated. The news itself, or the media itself, has kind of deviated itself or detached itself from the truth, and more went into the hyperbolic expression of the truth, which kind of has caused this distrust in media itself. Because if you look at around the time of when media was most trusted, was around the time of Vietnam War in the United States, at least, is where people trusted New York Times, people trusted another outlet that was sharing similar information, and that kind of corroborated each other's stories that, no, this is true, this is happening, the government is lying, right? So in that regard, I feel like since the news has evolved, people need to evolve their perception of what they think is true and kind of understand that what qualifies something to be true in the first place. Because if you don't even have the parameter of, okay, can I even trust the fact that this is true or not? How do I trust what I'm being told in terms that, oh, you just go with what I'm saying because I said it is, and I'm the CNN, so you have to trust me anyways, you know?
Yeah, but I do also want to expand something on what you're saying, because the more I hear, the more I keep hearing that. The more I hear, the more I keep hearing. Look at my lexicon, so big, so big. I do think that it exposed something in our society, or at least in the culture. I'm not going to speak with all cultures, just one specific, because we tend to say that we value truth. And even though we are aware that our medias are not necessarily telling us the truth, we still take it. And we don't take the extra step to actually look into the research, because yes, we may be overwhelmed by information, but if you really value truth and want to see exactly what's going on in there, like, you would take the time. So like, it seems like I think, of course, I haven't done the proper research on it, that we value truth less than we actually think we do.
So
That we're
yes,
not necessarily.
here's my I think the meat of my conversation lies here in terms that I feel that people always have an agenda, whether they know it or not. Truth is always used for an agenda. And which is why media got so much attention in the first place, is because it kind of corroborated the truth or the version of the truth that somebody would have been telling. So Efrain brought this point up that if it's not on media, it didn't happen, or if it's not recorded, it didn't happen, or the event didn't take place, which makes us as human beings super insecure, because everybody wants to know that they exist, or something that happened to them which is significant is on the record. That, yeah, it was my birthday. I got a promotion. I got a scholarship. And if that's not showcased on the media, that plays on people's insecurities in terms that, did I even accomplish something if I didn't make the news? That's now the standard. And if that didn't happen, was my effort insignificant? Did I spend so much time doing nothing? And you would just spiral down into the self-questioning or self-doubt kind of a thing, which is why people want to publish more and more, and they want to be more aggressive towards, they don't care now that this is true or not, they just want the highlight reel in that case. So agenda, when coming back to using truth as an agenda, we do this in law all the time. We always look for truth, and people use it in two ways. Somebody would say that, no, I had an alibi, I didn't commit the murder. And the other one says, no, you don't have an alibi, that's why you committed the murder, right? So both are true, but it just depends who's using it for what agenda. Likewise, if, for example, let's say there's this really good job and it's very selective, and they ask me to write something that is true about myself. Now, I have two options. It depends on how I'm seeing it. It depends on how I see myself in that truth. I can say that, no, I'm an all-star accomplished student who's always been doing an internship since her 4 years in college, and so on and so forth. I can make a really big fat resume. Or, because I think it's insignificant, I could just say that, oh, I volunteered here and there sometimes. I've done like 10 hours of service or whatever, and that's it. Both are true. It depends on where I'm standing or where I'm looking at, because the other person can't be the judge of that, because they asked it about myself and about me. So I don't know where that leads the conversation, but that's my 2 cents on media and truth, and how it can be used as an agenda or it can't be, but it just depends.
Okay. Well, I don't normally like absolute, so I'm not completely sure exactly what the intention of the always truth can be used as an agenda. So later I would like to expand more on that. However, I think that there are some instances where, like, not both sides can be true. I mean, I don't know if that's maybe like a law kind of a deal. But like, I mean, you're trying to, don't get me wrong, I hate the whole law because they don't really, they just want to argue, they don't want to like find the truth. It seems like that's not the main focus in there. But I mean, could we consider that as a media with truth, the whole law process? Maybe we can try to incorporate it in this conversation because that's always something that I keep asking people like, hey, why is law done that way if you're not really looking for truth? You're just looking to see who wins the case. But I don't know. I don't think necessarily truth is always useful in an agenda. Sometimes people want to say it. And sometimes there are other cultures that they purposely don't say it. Sometimes they even think that by you trying to highlight all your merits, you are going to be like, somehow people are going to try to destroy you, so they discourage you to say those things. So I guess it depends on the culture. But I know this part of the conversation has been extended too much, so I'm going to just give the floor to Efrain.
Okay, cool. I want to kind of merge and kind of comment on what both Isra and Orlando said. I think they both kind of touched on the topic that, media and the news, it kind of presents itself as nonpartisan or purely facts or whatever, but in fact they're always kind of pushing an agenda. I think if you go back to if you go back to kind of like around the Civil War era, if you look at what newspapers called themselves, they would call themselves like the Democrat Gazette or like the Republican Gazelle or something like that. It was very explicit what they were about. They didn't try to hide. They didn't try to act like they were nonpartisan. I mean, maybe a couple. For the newspapers were partisan, and they were openly partisan about it. They're, we believe in this, and this is how we report. If you're, Democrat, then you can subscribe to us. If Republican, subscribe over there. We don't want you, whatever. That was very explicit and upfront. But then, as media started evolving, you now have media that tries to act like it's always nonpartisan. It's always just telling the truth. And I think what media is now, I think that media now, 99% of the time, I think media now is always factual, but I don't think that it's always truthful. I'll give an example. Imagine there's a city. Imagine let's say 2019 there was 10,000 murders, and in 2020 there was 100 murders, right? One news station could say, oh yeah, look at the problem. There's a huge problem in murder in this city. There was 100 murders this year or whatever, but that ignores. Because that's a truthful statement, but they can be ignoring what happened the year before, where it's 10,000. So obviously, murder comparatively isn't that big of a problem. It's going they're presenting something to you in a way where you interpret, oh, the city has a really bad crime problem, when you realize, oh no, crime has actually gone down quite a bit, right? And then if you just look at kind of the people who are in charge of media now, like you look at Jeff Bezos, owns the Washington Post. You look at I know Anderson Cooper of CNN. He is his family is a Vanderbilt. That's where his family comes from. If you look at Chris Wallace on Fox News, his father used to be the president of CBS. If you look at Tucker Carlson on Fox News, he is basically the heir to the not Tyson, the Purdue chicken or something like that, one of the main chicken manufacturers. And also Anderson Cooper worked 2 semesters in college as a CIA intern. And if you tell me that Project Mockingbird or something like that isn't going on today, then I'm just not going to believe you. But I think that media, pretty much now, if you just look at who the players are in media, it's pretty obvious that they always have an they're just try to act like they're just telling you the raw stories, the raw facts, and whatnot. And I think they're also kind of going back to what Isra said about how it's more about the headlines, it's more about what's flashy and whatnot. If you watch, cable news like 20, not maybe not 20, but 30 years ago or so, they didn't have like the revolving chyrons on the screen where it's always like the headlines running along the screens while like the talking heads talk or whatever. But now you have more and more of that, and then people now just a lot of people just get their news by scrolling headlines on Twitter or Instagram or something like that. So I think because media is less, how do I say, it's less about the details, it's more just about the headlines, it's easier to manipulate a narrative through that. And with that, I yield my time.
Okay, thank you so much. By the way, if you don't want to speak because, we're too intimidating for some reason, trust me, I cannot hurt you. You can always just type. You can type your answers and I will read them just in case. For example, Sita, he's saying the corporate media is driven by profit, so they have to put out the stories that sensationalize. and they use their influence to attack their competition in a new independent media. And we have 2 likes on that comment. Raise those likes so we can make it more true. All right, so next in line you are Orlando. Go ahead, put some salt. Use
No,
a frame.
definitely not throwing
Just saying.
myself. But you guys, I mean, you guys said a lot of good things. It's kind of hard to kind of pick out what to kind of respond to, but I think both Efren and Isra have really good points. I mean, to some extent, it just seems like the media has become sort of this shortcut to knowledge, where essentially you're not actively doing research, you're not actively searching for anything. Rather, you're just scrolling, like how Efren said. And so I think what's making it a little more dangerous is that we're kind of going further along that. Like, we're not watching news segments that actually have some kind of commentary about it. We're moving towards the point where we're actually just scrolling and seeing a headline and thinking we understand the entire context. And I think not understanding the context of truth is really, really bad, because there can be truths that are given without context, but then they paint a false picture. You know, you could have something like, okay, the average American in the US earns a certain amount, and that's a good, and it's good, it looks good. Okay, well, when you look at the social classes in America, what percentage is in this bracket, what percentage is in that bracket? If you don't have those 2 truths, you're looking at America or the US and the social classes and the income wages in a very distorted fashion. And often a lot of the truths and facts that are given in the US are presented in that fashion, that they're just presented with one small puzzle of the big overarching piece. And so I think, like I said, it's getting a little bit more dangerous with the fact that we're just once again just scrolling, and it's kind of bad. You know, I try to watch things like I'm mostly like a progressive myself, so I watch a lot of progressive podcasts, but I'll watch Fox on occasion, I'll watch CNN on occasion, and seeing how they talk and the rhetoric they have is just like, oh man, it makes me feel some type of way. But yeah.
Some type of way. Could you expand on it?
No.
Yeah, just checking. All right. Before I continue yielding the floor, I just want to say Osita is very happy that someone brought up Operation Mockingbird. Good, and that one has 2 love cards, so he's improving. There you go. Anyways, we continue. We cannot get distracted. All right, Yusha, you're next.
Great discussion, guys. I'm sorry I wasn't here from the very beginning. I had some clients in, but yeah, I mean, truth and media. I mean, what could go wrong, right? So I guess it's always bias. There's always going to be a bias, and never the whole truth, because that's just how humanity is. I mean, even we're just so selfish when it comes to anything, especially when it comes to knowledge, because, oh, I know something that can help. I don't want others to know, because then I'm creating competition. And with that being said, I guess it's simple as that. We just want the truth, sugar-coated truth about stuff we like, and we just want to push everything else under the rug that we don't like. For example, what's that guy's name? The Apple founder.
Apple founder?
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, thank you.
I was thinking of the actual Apple, so it's like God.
No, Steve Jobs. Thanks, guys. I mean, about him, right? We look at Apple products like, oh, they are very difficult to hack. They're difficult to get into. I mean, how noble was Steve Jobs to make sure of that, right? But what we don't know is that back when dial-up phone was a thing and internet was just a very small baby, there were these groups called phone phreakers with a PH. Phone phreakers, what they would do is play a certain sound into the phone, and that connects you over to a dispatcher for which you don't have to pay. For example, if I'm calling from Texas to California over a landline, right? I'm going to have to pay a fortune for it. And thanks. And for that, what they would do to avoid any charges, they would call a 1-800 number, usually a helpline or something like that, and then play a certain frequency into the phone. And that would connect them to where they wanted to call for free. And this was the birth of hacking as well. So these phone phreakers, what they did was hack the system, because as far as the phone companies went, they didn't care what phone number you have. They cared about the dial tones that is behind each key. Like even right now, if you pick up a phone, even your own cell phone, you dial a number, you hear those beeps. Those are different frequencies and different length of sound. So as far as the phone company is concerned, that is what your identity is. So what I'm trying to get at is Steve Jobs was the founder of freaking boxes, phone freaking boxes. These were devices that would hack into landlines and allow people to communicate for free. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but given the fact that a major truth that Steve Jobs was a hacker, that is absurd. I mean, now I hate Apple products even more, because not because they're bad or anything like that. It's just, there's no truth behind it. I mean, if it was presented like this, hey, Steve Jobs used to be a hacker, right? So who knows better uh, about breaching technology than a hacker? So that would have made sense. Like, oh yeah, okay, now I value my security more. But you go on YouTube and you see these ads that, oh hey, my credit card number is this, oh hey, my password number is that, and blah blah blah, whatever they want to bash on other devices for. So when it comes to the truth, I think the only reason why we value it so much is because it benefits us for some reason. And that goes a lot in the court. If I have a document to prove that I was born in the United States, that's the truth of it. Even though my passport, my parents, my friends, family, everyone says I was born in not USA. As long as I have a certificate that proves my statement to be true, I'm a US citizen like that. So
You should.
that's why.
You should. You've been on mute. You know that?
Yes. Yes, you're about 10 minutes too late, Professor.
But okay, I do want, before I say my comment, because I do have one. I saw that Parker was raising his or her hand. I apologize whether you're he or she. I cannot see you.
So I read a little bit about A Brave New World. It's basically about like how technology is going, like it's an information economy, and we kind of already live in that, right? So what you're saying is a reality. Just I know it is for myself as well, because I know my phone's listening to me at all times. Like, how do you think the feds bust people who are silent? Like, they listen all the time. So I just wanted to like agree with you on that. But like to bring it back to truth, like you said justice, right? But justice wasn't always a thing. You know, like Plato's brother created the whole thing of justice, and that was kind of like a new term of philosophy, I would say. So we kind of determined that law was the truth. So I don't know. I just wanted to point that out. I'm late. I just got into this, so.
No, totally. I agree with you, because whatever the majority says goes. It's a simple society of majority is authority. How do you think these laws are so implemented? Because a lot of people agree to the immoral act of killing one another, even though it's not. I mean, there's nothing in any religion or any I guess
there's
any philosophy that says killing is wrong, but
I wouldn't say that's true necessarily. Majority does not call the shots all the time. Otherwise, like, we'll be in a different society.
Our phones, because he's the minority. He's the one crazy dude with a vision, flipping pages on his device that we don't even know. Like in the 80s, like imagine him. He's telling his people, I'm flipping pages through my head with my fingers, and I don't even have anything in my hands. Like, imagine what his workers are thinking. This dude's a nut. He's crazy. But look, Apple everywhere. Like,
yeah,
company in the world.
Yeah. And I okay, but I'm trying to bring this up. Kind of like maybe bringing a little bit more toward like truth in itself, because I mean something that we have been exploring for a month already is that truth is complicated. And truth can be even daunting, and I just keep trying to see, like, okay, we keep talking about truth, and the philosophers, that's kind of like our thing, you know. We always try to find what truth is, but I mean, why in this case, why does it matter so much? If we are seeing that it's so hard to get it, to almost to the point of impossible. If we think that it's impossible, why we keep looking at it? Why it's so important for us to
Because it
believe that
almost
media
leads
says
to
truth?
like a life that has no meaning if you don't know who's running it for you.
Ooh, I just hope no one is running it for me necessarily, at least not entirely. But okay,
Yeah.
I'm opening this question to see maybe Nancy can, for once during the semester, bring something that we can actually use during the conversation. So go ahead. I mean, not much expectation, of course, but I mean, we can always just give you a try.
Can somebody mute Fernando? Happy to be here, folks. Yeah, listen, I like where the conversation kind of went, unexpectedly down this sort of technological tangent, but one that I think ties into the larger question of media's relationship to truth. I kind of want to circle back around to things that, again, Efron was saying, Isra was saying, and kind of, contextualize everything. I do think that a fascinating way to consider the establishing of truth is to consider it from the vantage point of what technology is doing nowadays. So sort of like, what is the function of technology? What is its greatest focus? What is it a resource for more than other areas in our lives? And it does seem to be, and again, this might sound obvious, but let me elaborate briefly. It does seem to be simply communication. Sharing one's thoughts, one's perceptions, one's perspectives, one's ideas, for better or for worse, to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, in a way that is as engaging as possible. I think this relates to something Isra was saying about social media and this notion of, again, rather than say talking about, creating a resume that is one way or the other, or something that's sort of like, agenda based or based upon the objective of having to use a resume in the first place, you can make the same claim about all of your social media accounts and all your social media profiles. There's some sort of an agenda to project, I don't want to use the word persona, I think that's a little unfair, but to project some aspect or some angle of the truth of who you are. And of course, you might change that presentation depending on, again, who you anticipate will be looking at it, future employers or things along those lines. So this idea of trying to sort of work with the real raw materials of experience and then present them in such a way that is how you would intend them to be received. I mean, I think that is kind of what rhetoric is. I think social media allows people to sort of really refine the rhetoric, really hone in on their target demographic, that sort of thing. And so that begs the question, to what end? And that brings us back to the question of agendas. And I mean, typically, I think it's easy to forget about this. And, Orlando was making the point about holding media accountable, and Efren was making that point as well. Media is still a business. I mean, journalism, newspapers, blogs, all those places, those sources, they need money. They're a business. So, I mean, that's something else to consider as well. I think the deeper question would be, I mean, how malleable is truth? Or is there a certain point where it's like, I don't care what the agenda is, I don't care how skilled the rhetoricians are, you cannot bend this to say that. Like, is there any sort of final standard, or where you take it too far, or is anything, I suppose, persuasive? You can make anything as persuasive as necessary. In which case, what does that mean for truth itself?
So I look at it like this. So like truth, just like anything, is relative to each person because each person grows up differently from the rest. So they have this own way of thinking based on how they're growing up or whatever. That goes into relativism and all of that. And then when we go like faster and faster with technology, the general consensus of the human race is that we're getting better and we're moving forward in like technology, and we're doing what's right for the rest of us. But then we are still like all separated by basically nationality and that way of thinking, because the Chinese, they think a lot differently than the Westerns do, like just because of how they were grown up, and they have this like sort of the government's kind of pushed this agenda on them, how to think, what to do. And then over here in America, everyone is kind of just like, what do I believe? Like it's hard to come up to a conclusion. So I just think like truth is relative until we discover the truth. The truth is always true because it is truth, right? But we as people discover the truth as time goes on.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, all those great points. I'm just gonna continue the queue so it doesn't get too far off. And next one is Isra.
All right, so this is something that Orlando said. It was in support of something else that he was saying, but it stuck with me about stolen headlines just to get clickbait or something like that. So just because it's stolen, does that negate the fact that it's true? Or vice versa? If it's true, why are we so hung up on, oh, you stole it from so and so? Because at the end, if we truly are all truth seeking and there's no agenda or no motive behind it, why do we care where it's coming from? Unless and until we have some sort of beef with it, or we want to question the truth, which is why we want to question the credibility of what makes it true. So in that regard, I feel like what Parker just said, in terms that truth is still the truth, and no matter what, it will stay the truth. I feel like as humans, truth definitely is more complicated, but the reason it matters more to us is because it's serving us in one way, shape, or form. Whether it means that I get to gain somebody's friendship, whether it means I get to gain some more knowledge that can help me down the road, or whether it means that I get employment, or even if it means that I can prove that somebody else is a liar. That's how I would see the truth, and that's why the truth would matter to me the most, even if it's not, like, I don't care where it's coming from. If it's true, that's all I should care about as a good moral human being, right? But since we're all twisted and corrupted, we care about where is it coming from? Because at the end of the day, like with news outlets especially, like Professor Mendy said, it's a business. And whenever money's involved, my first instinct is that if money's involved, I don't trust it, because people go to extraordinary lengths to get the money or have something to do with money. So if there's something I know that they have something in it for them, why would I trust them so openly and say, no, I trust it because they're a big name in the game, I trust them? How did they become a big name in the game? Is it because of their credibility, or did they have a lot of trade-offs? What went down? Why should I trust that this is true? And why shouldn't I just trust my own senses, my own cognitive ability, my own skills, and say that because I don't think it's true, I don't think it's true at all, and you can't convince me otherwise. On the other hand, I could say that because it's true, even though I don't believe it, I still accept it as the truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but like, wouldn't you be accepting falsehoods then if you just, like, okay, if I have an orange and I tell you it's orange and you tell me it's purple and you believe that in your entire body that it is purple, like, is it purple or is it orange? And then we can get into like
subjective in that case, right? Truth is not the truth then. Truth is not the ultimate truth. It depends on who's telling me what, with what credibility, and what I relate to it as.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I'm confused with the thing of truth is not truth. Okay, but I'm gonna just let it to Orlando, and then we continue the conversation.
I really liked what Isra Parker had to say, but I guess I'll go a different direction here. I think when it comes to truth, I mean, honestly, I'm starting to question if the purpose of the media is really to convey truth, or if maybe it's just the whole purpose of the media is to, in a sense, get you closer to truth, for you to draw your own truth from it, I guess, in that sense. And so But with that said, I kind of question, well then, to what extent are we controlled by the media? To what extent is it that we're falling for their certain agendas? But then I question that, but then I question myself. How willing am I to accept that agenda? If that agenda wasn't presented to me, would I have gone to that on my own? So what I'm saying here is that we're often pointing the fingers at these people at the top, and we think, okay, well, they're the ones that are actually controlling everything. Well, in reality, we've never been in their position. Given the same circumstance, would we not act the same way they're acting? Because the thing is, they've gone through life in the same fashion that we have, and they've experienced things and their own biases, but we also have our own biases. And so this kind of brings up this question of freedom. How much outside of ourselves can we really think about things? I don't think we can to some extent. I think for me, I kind of prioritize just always wanting to be open-minded, but I often find myself that I'm not. In some instances, not always, obviously. But I think when it comes to that, when it comes to media and the truth, I think similar to law, the media and like law doesn't always mean the truth, because in law it's just the test of argument, it's not the test of truth. There are so many legal loopholes, so many people that are wrongly accused and executed, that it's not equivalent to the truth. So I think in this instance, I mean, why we kind of have this principle of truth and what we want from it, I think it's because we just want sort of this ultimate goal to become in a sense like our society to be the best of. And if we reach this absolute truth, then essentially we'll essentially reach this sort of, I guess, evolution in a sense. That's kind of like I'm exaggerating, I'm going a little bit farther out, but I think that in a sense is the ultimate goal.
I feel like we have like evolved mentally because of writing, you know, because we do look in the past and see what great thinkers thought, but that was like of their time, you know. We point fingers back at them to say why we believe what we do now when we really just don't even know why. We just think it sounds good, so we agree with it. So like Socrates, he was like banding together all these young people because they were listening to him, and then the government killed him, like as you do, you know. But I really just don't know anymore. Like I have no more answers. Like who there is no like one authoritarian piece that can speak to me and tell me what I believe. I don't know if I can believe what my own head is telling me most of the time. I can't look at my screen or my phone. I don't know if I can trust every word of like my parents, my brothers, my friends. It all goes down to like what Isra said, like truth, it's hard to know what is truth, and truth is like therefore relative in my opinion.
I think that's a good place to start, though. I think for some people it can be detrimental, but for others, if they use it effectively, it can be good.
Like
Because
good
I
and
think,
evil.
yeah, it can be detrimental in the sense if, oh, I just don't trust anything. Oh no, I just, you know, you kind of become sort of a conspiracy theorist in that sense. But it can be useful because then you start to be skeptical of everything. And so then you essentially find the correct method to reach, I guess, effective truth in a sense.
Oh yeah, I like that. I like effective truth. That's a good name. That's a good name.
Effective truth is a good name.
Like
He stole it
effective
from me.
altruism, or
But I mean, just
No,
find it.
no, you
no,
should
not
no.
similar, but like you know,
There's no salt here.
I
you
just
should.
read about effective altruism like yesterday, so that's why I brought that up. Sorry.
Yeah,
Comparing the
yeah,
two.
we were talking about it yesterday. But anyways, I mean, no, but yes, I do agree that it is a very good point to start. To kind of like be conscious that even yourself, that even what you think may not be truth, and you have to constantly be like on your awareness of being self-conscious on assessing even your own thoughts, which it can be sound easy, but a lot of people don't do it because they trust their senses, as something that we have been exploring throughout this theme, is that sometimes we don't even have the senses to grasp what is in front of us. We may need more evolution in order to actually assess how our environment truly is. But well, I also have to say, and I think he left, I'm not completely sure, but Efrain was also saying that a lot of media outlets get their majority of fundings by donors, now subscription or ads. which is also kind of like entangles on what has been said, that the information that is being sent is driven by, well, the business part of it more than anything else. Okay, so you said you're next.
Thanks. Well, you guys just led up to my next point, and that could not have gone more perfect. So, yes, Orlando. Now I'm picking up on what you've been teaching me. So, okay. So, getting back to the point, I think truth is we call it relative because we see that it might be different to anyone else. But in my opinion, truth is just about how good you are at convincing. See, even in law, science, or whatever, you have it. Any field where you want to prove something to be true, you have to convince the other party. That goes in debate, arguments, fights, whatever. Even you tell yourself that, for example, if I'm hurt, right, and my leg's broken, I want to be somewhere to get out of that situation. I'll tell myself that I'm okay. It doesn't hurt that much, just to get to some shelter or something. And it's just simple as that. Truth is whatever you convince the other person to be. For example, no, I'm not going to pick on Professor Mandy. For example, let's go back to the orange and purple example from earlier. And yeah, if you can convince me that the fruit orange is purple in color, or I can convince you that it's green in color, then yeah, that orange will be green, or even a color for that matter. Just like we had taken a look at the thought experiment regarding color, where this Australian scientist had done all of that, and that girl all she knew was black and white, but in theory she knew what red was. And if I can convince her that her theory of understanding red color is wrong, then yes, what I'm saying is the truth. So we title it as truth being objective, or subjective. But in actuality, is it not just convincing one another of something just so you guys can mutually agree on that, to bring it out to the bigger crowd? Like laws. If I can convince the jury that I did not commit the murder, even though I did, I'm free. That is the truth. That I did not commit the murder. So in that regard, yes, it is about convincing others.
So I don't.
But
Oh.
I
think
have
that's the
something
truth.
to
I think
say.
that's
I'm sorry.
a deception of the truth.
Because this is the thing. Like, truth is truth, and if you convince someone that there is something else to be truth, what you're saying in itself is false. What is being truth is that person believed your word, but the action itself is not truth. What happened with laws is that you're trying to ask somebody to believe what you're saying, whether the act in itself was true or not. That should be unchangeable, because if truth is that subjective, then let's just say that there's nothing is true. Nothing is true at all. We have to have something that is defined. So what I think is, like, yes, granted, like, if once somebody believe a lie, the truth is that the person believed a lie, but don't necessarily mean that what you did is not false anymore. I think that's at least that's my point. Because
I just want to say, I think like a really good question is all truth objective, or is some of it subjective but most of it's objective? Like, what is it? Is all truth objective, or is most of it objective and some of it's subjective? Like,
I was going to say that, like, I think to some degree that's what the importance of subjectivity and objectivity is. Some things are clear as day, 2 + 2 = 4. That's a truth. That's objectively truth. I think with law, it's often very vague. They use words and they use rhetoric very specifically, like the ideas of, what was it when they were talking about, what was sedition? When you're talking about,
well, this goes back to like fairness, right? Like, who says fairness is right or true?
But these are words that are used subjectively in the sense that they're proven. And
yeah,
that's why law is written in such a way so that you can
right.
kind of look at it from every single perspective. But there's other cases that are just completely clear. This is obviously the truth. I think that's just what we're dealing with here.
Okay, I'm gonna read something, and I'm gonna read various texts. So, all right. So the first one comes from Osita. Just one like. What's happening there, guys? Just increase those likes. That he said that there might be less people seeking truth than we may like to believe. Pun intended. We're all subjects to confirmation bias. Then Catherine, I don't know if she answered it, but she did text it. I will say that the media's main purpose is to establish the truth that they wish the public to believe. There's a newspaper owner called Rupert Murdoch who owns a huge amount of news networks in America, Australia, and in the UK. With all these newspapers, he can influence the mass, and there will be no way that we will know the difference between, because he owns a huge monopoly in the media industry. Which Osita then, with one love, is media necessary for society to function? What about illiterate, ancient civilizations that had no written language? What did media look like in that society? Gossip, oral tradition, which is something that we were all talking before, that yes, media is not subjected just to reading. It can also be news that are being spoken. And I mean, to some degree, illiteracy was also used to manipulate the people. Which, I mean, I guess that can be a different topic since we don't have that much time to talk on it. But yeah, next one is Isra.
So the entire conversation about media and what's true, truth is subjective, objective, is all good and well, but I can't wrap my head around why do we care? Why do we want to know the truth to be the truth? Why is it so significant to us that we're willing to go to wars over it? We're willing to go against a tyrant because people say the truth is he's a mean person and he shouldn't have the throne, and so on and so forth. Like, why do we care? So I think that an answer to that might be is because we don't know what to trust. As human beings, we are very doubtful towards other things, ourselves, and so on and so forth. And truth is one thing that we know for it to be true, which we can trust that no matter what happens, it'll stay the same. No matter which angle I look at it from, it should stay the same if it's really true. And another reason why it's so important for us to know who is telling the truth or why is somebody telling the truth is because we've all experienced it personally that sometimes truth can be detrimental to our own self. It would be good for the other person or something else, but it's not good for me. And as a human being, we tend to trust those people who are willing to take the risk of destruction by telling truth versus those who try to avert the truth because of the risk of destruction, even though majority of us are wired for, what's it called? Survival or self-protection, self-preservation. For self-preservation, we're all wired to protect our own self first. And if I know that you're willing to risk that by telling me the truth, I know that I can trust you with most things and that I know that you won't be trying to manipulate me or trying to skew my vision of what is true, you know?
Okay. I mean, yes, I like the whole like returning to why truth is important. I mean, I obviously do not have the answer. If so, I wouldn't be here. I would be like making too much money. But I do believe that is in part. I mean, we base our actions again based on this idea that we would love to like understand our surrounding, and I guess to some extent we fight to impose our truth, whether or not this is truth or not, is because if most people are not ready to face being wrong. So it's easier just to look into imposing your truth, so you avoid the whole principle of like having to recognize that your sensations of your analytics on a matter is not necessarily correct. And again, as you mentioned, there are other people also that may be benefiting from the whole like concept, so they will, as Yusha also was mentioning, go out of their way to convince enough people so they can protect their status in the society. But yeah, now I'm gonna just give the floor to Christina. I will be very, very silent. Don't worry.
Hi, everybody. So I'm talking late in the game, and that means I have the benefit of having listened to you all. So thank you for the help here. as we're discussing truth in really various media outlets, I keep thinking about what would news look like if it was just based upon objective truth. And so, just the facts, just the who, what, when, where, why, like 10 facts, this happened today. And, I have a couple of reactions to this hypothetical. It'd be incredibly boring. I don't think that it would be useful. And so many of you are talking about the usefulness of good news. We call news stories stories. They're narratives. They're not objective facts. Every news writer, and usually when I think about news, I'll tell you the media that I think about is newspaper writing, because I think that it has the highest standards of truth, at least compared to, say, modern cable news and, of course, like things on Facebook. We need these narratives, and they are constructs. Thinking about how different media organizations have different standards. I like to look at those that we would wish to model or emulate, like NPR comes to mind, of having high journalistic integrity, at least compared to, I don't know, Huffington Post or Fox News or something like this. And just really critically examining, well, if this is an organization that's doing it well, how are they doing it well? And one thing that keeps coming up in the conversation is how media is an industry. It's tied to capitalism. NPR operates because it has government funding, because it has donors, and that helps them out quite a bit to be able to have a lot of integrity. But it's a model that's likely not one that everybody can emulate. It's tough to tie media to capitalism, but at the end of the day, every news writer who's out there in the world and oftentimes facing great danger to do what they do, they need to go home and have a meal on their table. So I guess that's just my drawing upon a lot of what you guys said. So thanks.
You're welcome. But by the way, be careful with Orlando.
Did you say you're welcome? No, thank you for what you just said.
All right. So Orlando is saying, and I'm gonna be taking the spot right now to just read what you said because you don't want to say it, seemingly. And he thinks.
You can just skip it. It's okay.
No. I'm gonna read it.
It's a long one. I don't want to read it.
Then I get scolded for not reading it. I'm not gonna be facing the consequences. So he says, I think in the pursuit of truth, we are looking for the correct answer. If a politician claims to be something but is something else really, something again, we feel dumb because we are presented with the candidates from the start. Truth is important not on basis of fairness, but decision making. All right. Now, next one is Isra.
I love the point that Katrina brought up in terms, Christina, I apologize. Christina brought up in terms of what the thought that what would the world look like if we didn't have standardized news outlets, and it was just like objective. Everything is just objective. We're not looking at the context. We're not looking at anything else. And the first thing that comes to mind is innocence being punished, or innocence being punished unduly, in terms that, okay, because even if it was a frame job, because the evidence points towards you and it's objective and it's the truth, we had witnesses, but they're not sure, but it's still witnesses, and you still get punished for something that you didn't do. In that regard, I believe this is important to note, that we should know, we should have a little bit of context towards the truth as well, because pretty much anything can be put into the truth, or anything can be true, but contextually speaking, is it the truth for the moment? is it what really happened, or is it what's really going on? And I think that's where where it ties into the media, and that's where it ties into the politicians' argument kind of a thing, that, okay, we need to be able to trust that somebody that's giving us what we're considering it to be true is actually true, which is why the news actually became such a big industry, is because people are always looking for corroborative evidence. And there's no better corroborative evidence than news outlets. Unfortunately, because like other industries, news outlets have been capitalized as well and commercialized as well. It's harder to gauge, because money is involved. It's harder to gauge or assess that, is it really the truth? So the burden of truth also further falls onto not only the journalist who's publishing the story, but also the consumer who's consuming the truth to be the truth, and then making conclusions on, oh, the politician is corrupt, or, oh, how sweet is that prince? He's trying to volunteer at a pet shelter, even if it's for an hour, then he goes back to his mansion. But for that 1 hour, he's being a really kind person, so I'm going to trust that he's a kind person in general, you know?
Okay. All right. Just going to keep it short. Nancy, you're next.
Yeah, I think I want to build on the points from Christina and Isra. Yeah, I mean, to something that Isra just said a minute ago, you know, I think a burden of responsibility, if you want to call it a burden, we could just say a responsibility falls on the consumer. You know, Gibbs had to leave, but he was saying, he was kind of giving expression to this idea of a consumer who's very disoriented and, you know, vulnerable, doesn't know where to turn for truth. That kind of consumer is very easily exploitable when it comes to things like the news. And this ties back to what Christina was saying about the narrative aspect of it, which I want to develop. I think it's an important point. You know, what we consider it might be this. This is a case for maintaining ethical standards in media, in journalism, despite the, you know, capitalist or economic influence be going into the story themselves, etc. Precisely because, okay, it reminds me of something Nietzsche once said. Nietzsche, he once challenged kind of playfully the belief in cause and effect. Nietzsche says there's really no such thing as cause and effect. Now Nietzsche, you know, he believed cause and effect, but he also was trying to make a bigger point that I'm going to elaborate on in a second. But he said the reason why there's no such thing as cause and effect is because of context. That it's possible to constantly sort of just zoom out and see the larger ramifications and the larger influences that resulted in one event, and then that event gets spread out, and then you could continually go back and go back and go back, and you could just see that, well, to say X caused Y, we're just making like an author's choice or a reader's choice and saying, well, this event begins and ends here. But really, there's so many other influences to tie into it. The cause and effect is almost like a construction. It's almost like a helpful myth that we allow ourselves to believe. I bring that up because, again, going back to rhetoric and presentation of the facts, it's possible to contextualize or recontextualize or decontextualize any sort of happening, any sort of collection of facts in a million different ways. It's possible to tell any story. And if you've ever studied like film editing and stuff like that, I mean, it's very easy to take the things that happen and arrange them in a way where you're telling a completely different narrative. And so the fact that humans are really good at doing that, using our imagination, using our ability to write and stuff, that is precisely why there needs to be some sort of standard so that we can't just use our abilities to spin any story. Hey, thanks for coming. So yeah, that's I think that's something to consider, because I think, you know, if you want to be successful in media, you have to get good at telling stories. You have to get good at presenting the facts in a way that's not just clear, but compelling.
Yeah, I just want to point this out. This is the truth. You just scared Christina.
Question.
Howard.
I have a question. So it's from Professor Manzi, because he's the expert in residence. So is fact the truth, or can it be fact but not true? or are those interchangeable things, or should we make an effort to separate the two, or are those one in the other altogether?
Yeah, it depends on who you ask. If you're to ask me, which is what you do, I would say that, yeah, you can make a distinction between fact and value, and that's where the question of truth arises. So you could say, here's what happened. You could watch the videotape or whatever. But then the question is, well, what do we make of it? Why do we care? Is it important to who? For what reasons? Which importance are superior or less? And that's questions of truth. Try to determine the value of the fact. Now, I pushed that even further. I would personally say there's not even really any such thing as fact. Like every fact is something that's perceived by human beings. We're inherently value judges. So it's not like we're even capable of just getting sheer facts. We will always automatically contextualize any set of facts to our own context, to our own personal life story. So we're already imbuing them with value. It's not like we can know objective value or objective truth, I would argue.
So can we actually then just say that truth is just a matter of perception on, okay, I perceive it one way, you perceive it the other way. I keep muting Ferdinando because his elbow's on the table and it's really echoing in my ear and I can't hear anybody else. So I keep muting him.
No, please,
I
but
have to
you're doing great. Keep doing that.
I have to mic, so I can do that too.
no, like I'm not sure if you can hear that, but I was having trouble hearing it, so I just had to mute you. But that's the question then. Is truth really just a matter of perception? And if so, then why are we so eager to prove our point of view more? Why are we so bent on know what I said is true and you have to admit that what I said is true?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those debates, they come down to questions of value, truth of what something means to somebody, as opposed to say, the truth of whether or not it's orange or purple. But what's so fascinating is that possible, if you're a good enough talker or a good enough writer or speaker, you can convince somebody that their perception is in fact correct. And it actually is purple, they just shouldn't believe their own perception. So, I mean, this is where you can sort of bend truth or misconception. But I would say this in direct response to your question, that it's possible for two truths that don't necessarily seem compatible to be compatible. Again, if you can kind of like, zone out or zoom out rather, and sort of see kind of like a bigger picture understanding of where these two truths might fit in, it's possible to maybe, again, see them as reconcilable or complementary even. So it's about what?
I'll let you finish.
Yeah, I want to say that you say.
Okay, now wait, hold on. I just want to say this. I don't think truth is always based on perception. I'm just gonna say that because I can go and kill someone out of malintent, and then I can convince someone that I didn't. I still killed them out of malintent. That's still the truth. Once again, it's just deception. We have to make that distinction. There can be cases where the truth is something that's more subjective and it more vague. I think that is the case. I don't think it's more like, no, the truth is I didn't because I convinced that guy I didn't.
Okay, see, here's where.
But Orlando, only because you say it without any proof, that does not make it the truth in any way, shape, or form. That might be the truth to you that you did not kill it, but it's not the truth to the person who is judging you. So the person who is judging you cares about what evidence you have. Your fingerprints were found on the knife. Your hair follicle or whatever was found on the crime scene.
What if I was perfectly deceptible though? What if I essentially planted the situation and made it so that anybody who sees it believes me? That argument just falls flat.
Well, no, I mean consider the other side of it, Orlando, because I see what you're saying and you're making a good point. But you're making a point about intention. Hey, what's going on? Good to see you. And so you're kind of saying, Orlando, like, I know in my heart that I had ill intent to kill him. But what if you end up going to see a therapist and the therapist convinces you, well, the reason you had that ill intent had to do with the way you were raised or something like that. or that you were exposed to something when you were a kid and it was traumatic. And then you begin
Or
to
the person
realize,
deserved it.
I
Or
think
the
you have
person
to. I
deserved
think
it.
you have to then
Yeah, yeah.
define what. I think you have to define what malintent. If I was legitimately just doing it out of revenge, that's malintent. You could say I could make any kind of rationalization to say, well, I was brought up this way and it led me to be this way. It does not change the fact that my intentions had malice in it. Do you get what I'm saying?
yeah, so one would be justifiable malice and the other not, but either way, it's malice.
It's still malice. Yeah, it's still truth.
Unless somebody convinces you that, malice.
No, in that moment though, I wouldn't have felt peace. I wouldn't have felt some kind of mystical. It would have been just vengeance, just rage. You know, it would have
See,
just been that.
that's what the argument is in terms of what is true. So yes, big part of it is what how you're seeing it and what you believe it to be true. And another part of it is that nobody can ever get into anybody else's heart and say that, this is exactly what they're feeling, they're telling the truth. All we can do as human beings is just assess with corroborative evidence, actions matching the talk or actions matching the words that a person has, in terms that, okay, he said he didn't have malintent. I've seen him being nice to so many people, and so I believe him, even though you yourself know that the only reason you were being nice is because you wanted them to grade your paper better, or you had a favor stuck with them, and that's why you were only being nice, but originally you had malintent towards that person, right? But I'm going to look at the evidence and I'm going to say that no, because I can't trust that this is true, I need further evidence that supports my idea of what I think is true about Orlando. But
So what I'm saying is that
About Orlando.
what I'm saying is that those kinds of standards sort of are essentially that standard for truth leaves room for error is what I'm saying.
For sure.
Because that's only so error within truth, that's not truth. That can be
Orlando.
something that's a deception is what I'm saying. And so because the reason I say that is because if we have someone who is just that good at deceiving and you are deceived, then you just don't have the truth. I think it's just
Orlando,
that.
but I'm gonna say that you need to calm down. You're too orange right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's the Donald Trump syndrome. I'm gonna call it that. Yeah, my head.
It comes out when he's passionate. It comes out when he's passionate.
No.
It's very passionate.
Okay,
It's
fine.
very
Let's keep going with
passionate.
this joke. So instead, you know how like the Incredible Hulk turns green? So I
You turn
orange.
orange.
I turned orange.
You
Yeah,
turned
I just need my
orange.
hair to fly off and start falling off, and it's perfect. Yeah, like that. Like.
Okay. Yusha? No? I mean, does it matter anymore?
No, I'll go. Hey, I'll go. I mean,
Wait,
w-
how about we let Jose go? Because he's been like, he hasn't
Yeah.
said anything yet. And
I'll keep it short. I promise. It's just
No.
Orlando. I'll come back to your topic later.
No,
I
I
mean,
don't
we can
want
debate
to.
it out. We
Let-
can debate it out later. But
No.
truth. No, see, it's a suggestion actually. If you want to know how wrongfully truth is portrayed in media and news, especially, there is a Netflix series called Lupin. It's a French name, but written Lupin. It's very easy to find. It's absolutely like on point about what goes on. It's like mwah, chef's kiss. It's like what goes on in social media. So a quick recap is the main character's dad was killed. Well, he was imprisoned where he committed suicide on a false charge of stealing a diamond necklace, which was worth like millions or something. But it wasn't him. So go ahead, watch it, and it's going to tell you how the government indirectly controls private news outlets and influences them. Well, influences with an asterisk after that. On how to give out only the information that the government wants them to. Because I think it was last week, Yusra and I, my other sister, we were debating that Spectrum TV, the cable box company, the internet provider, has their own news channel. And we thought that it was absurd for a cable box company to have a news channel, because then they have a bias of only promoting the news for agencies that support them the most. So in that case, I mean, it's just right up the alley with Fox, CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, all of these guys who have an ulterior motive to them. It's as simple as that. I mean, I can tweet out a post that I was out last night drinking with Ferdinando and Orlando, right? And suddenly that becomes a thing. If it draws enough attention, it becomes the news. People start believing it, even though I was at home in a meeting with you guys. No, it is short. Trust me. I can go on. I can go on debating Orlando's point for days.
No, thank you. Okay.
But Daniel, the floor is yours, buddy. Thanks for being patient.
It's okay. Thank you, guys. Great discussion. I've been in the background just hearing, but yeah, I just want to. I have a comment, which I think is very with this topic about the truth. I like something that Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysics, right? Yeah, he says that there are like three types of truths, which are the first one is, he calls it the objective truth, the personal truth, and the political truth. Have you ever heard of that? Yeah, of course, right. But I think this is very, I mean, to the topic that Orlando was discussing, and I think, I don't know if you already had that discussion, but I think it's very important to this discussion. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Thank you so much for contributing. And Orlando is not orange anymore.
I changed back. I calmed down. I'm more of like a, what is that? What would you call that? What color is this?
Fish.
Don't make me
You said
be
fish.
racist.
Who said? You say
Ham?
fish?
Beige.
But Mandy is now
Oh, you
orange
said
in my
fish.
street.
Okay, let's.
I'll call it more of a tangerine instead of an orange.
That's accurate. I think that's accurate.
I glow. What can I say? All right. I do want to just say one thing in response to what I think to bring up, because again,
Menti, I think your mic is covered. Your voice keeps fluctuating, and it's difficult to hear you. Like honestly, I'm not playing any games.
Yeah, he's not lying. It's the truth.
I think it was the mic of Ferdinando, but he's muted now. So.
What about now? Can you hear me?
It's Ferdinando.
It's Ferdinando. He has his elbows on the table, and it's somehow just disrupting the entire sound. It's echoing.
We get tech support on the line. All right.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, respond to Jose's point, because I like, yeah, this idea of there being different truths to fit the context, to fit the situation. So again, like a political truth functions in society. I think somebody in the chat asked, hey, do we need media to function? And I think the answer is yes, especially if media is conveying these truths, which is to say, like, what is legal, what is illegal, things along these lines. So I do think that, like, depending on how truth is being used, to use the passive voice intentionally, that determines, I guess, the degree to which it's immutable versus, you know, truths that are perhaps more plastic, more amendable, like amendments, things along these lines. But all right, we're way over time. Let me just really quickly plug again tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon. We're going to have second installment of the Philosophy and Film series, Food Inc. If you're unfamiliar, I'll put a link to the trailer in our chat here, and then look for it on Instagram tomorrow. It's a documentary, but it's an eye-opening one. It was very controversial when it was released. It was released in 2008 or maybe 2009, and it's going to take a really close look at consumerism and capitalism as it pertains to what we understand the truth of our food to be, where it comes from, how it's treated, things along these lines, themes of vegetarianism, ethics, animal rights, stuff like that, as well as, again, business and corporate rights, quote unquote. Okay. Yeah, check out the Instagram, by the way. We're doing student spotlights every Saturday, so we have another one up from last time. Go check out B. She's featured up there. They're coming out great. And, you know, if you'd like to be spotlit yourself, by all means, reach out. Happy to to hang out with you and conduct a little interview.
See if you're spotlight worthy.
Yeah,
Check
exactly.
out the website as well, guys.
That's right.
We put in too much effort into that.
Okay, question. So,
No.
Ignore him. What's up?
Go ahead, man.
Yes.
how rude! Oh my God, how rude! I was asking if we're allowed to.
Oh, that's messed up.
Nobody muted you. Yeah,
Who's
that's
doing it? It's Yusha. I bet it's Yusha. No, it's not, because
No.
he's messing with his hand thing. It's Ferdinando.
I have my hands here.
No.
It's not me. It cannot be me.
Can we watch the documentary and then join the discussion later, or do we have to watch it together?
no, you can join the discussion later for sure.
Okay. And what time? Is there a time that y'all will be starting the discussion, or can I just pop in once I'm done?
Yeah, you could probably pop in once you're done. We're gonna open up the room here in Teams at 4 o'clock, and we're gonna begin to watch it at 4:30. I think it's about 90 something minutes, so it'll probably end,
Okay.
yeah, like 6:15, something like that, and then we'll just discuss.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Good stuff. Now we have to like be watching the mic now. Jesus. Okay. So yeah, a couple of the reminders. Remember that if you're watching, if you are studying any of the philosophy courses, or you just want to learn a little bit more about philosophy, every email we're sending like a philosopher chat where you can just join us and we can talk about basically any point that you want to explore a little bit more, like philosophically. So make use of that. And yeah, watch us on YouTube. I'm gonna be uploading that video. If not tonight, then tomorrow morning. You can always use those extra points. All right. I don't think I'm missing anything. We're gonna start
Oh,
joining
hey,
the
Jose is saying, can you add him to the email list?
him. No, why? No, of course I will. Of course I will.
We need the member.
One more thing too, I forgot to mention. Yeah, Professor Hunsinger, who was a guest here today, she will be delivering a faculty presentation during.
We can't understand you, Manzi. I think it's.
I'm muted, Ferdinando.
Try,
I'm sorry.
Go again.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Whoever did that, thank you. Make it permanent. No, the
It's not me.
Stop.
yeah,
Stop.
Crazy.
the,
It's
faculty,
he
the,
himself.
faculty, the faculty guest who is here today, Professor Hunsinger, she is going to be presenting as a faculty spotlight at the conference that we're hosting, Dallas College Philosophy Undergraduate Student Conference on Tuesday, April 27th. And her topic is going to be truth and media. So we'll be revisiting this topic. She'll be presenting material on it. And yeah, if you like this conversation, check out her presentation in about 2 months, something like that. All right.
That's cool. That's appropriate.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Very appropriate. Like muting me the whole day.
There we go. That's why it was a good meeting.
Okay. Yeah, that was exactly why.
It went
I
much
agree.
smoother than my past experience, honestly. We should probably have it handy, just the button.
Have a
Click.
button. Yeah.
Yeah, just click and
Yeah.
be done.
I agree. Just tap me out. But
Joe.
okay. One more thing, and I did mention this to Nancy. I already created. We have 260 members in this Microsoft team. I already did the whole compiling of the emails, and I should be adding like a calendar invite to this type of event so everyone can receive their notification for this. So you should be probably expecting an email different from our philosophy email. All right, I think that makes sense. So don't just ignore that email, please. We have the link to this.
Question.
All right. Answer.
Question.
We have a lot. We still have people that stuck with us. That's nuts. It's been like an hour.
Or
40.
they're just out of their computers and we're gonna have to kick them off. Well, no, not that we do it
They're
anyway.
AFK.
Yeah, but
Did
we're
Professor
probably gonna have
Manzi
to
leave?
kick you out.
No, he's still here. He just turned off his camera.
Okay. Question was for the philosophy.
Isadora is still here, she said. Oh, we're sorry, Isadora.
You're a champ, Isadora.
At this point, we just lose enough
Maybe
brain cells to
participating or
make
not.
jokes around like this.
I can
Yes, sir.
hear both at the same time.
There, that's better. Okay. Wait.
Somebody mute
there.
Yusha so I can hear it.
Yeah. Okay. Back to my point. Pay attention.
Okay, so the question was, are students allowed to make submissions for the philosophy club thing, philosophy conference, or is it more faculty and students happen in the fall only?
No, it's going to be the vast majority students. We just
Oh,
like to
just
have.
the usual.
Yeah, it's the usual. Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't have to say it like that, but yeah. It's the usual.
I've been
Yeah,
part of it like
yeah.
3 times
Just
already
the-
now, so it's the usual
Same,
for me. So I'm just
same. Me
asking.
too.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Okay.
no more.
Just that thing, that tiny event that happen every semester.
You should submit as under your alter egos, and then just like go in disguise.
No,
don't
I not
speak
get
in
any credit. My original ego will be hurt, and then the alter ego will be like, "Hey, what did I do?" And it's a mess. We don't want to get into that.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, we're going to send out the call for submissions probably over spring break.
Mhm.
And yeah, that'll give about 6 weeks for people to put something together if they'd like. Tell your friends. It could be anybody, any student, anywhere. Any student, anywhere in Texas.
Manzi, are you gonna play your guitar?
Absolutely. I'm going to freestyle rap as I do it.
Okay. I didn't ask for that one,
Nice.
but okay.
He
I
has
know,
the
I
hoodie
know, I know
already,
why.
so he's ready.
I'd rather not. But okay.
That's how I'm opening the conference.
Yusha has his hand up.
philosophy
I don't know
is cool.
why.
What?
Yusha has his hand up. I don't know why. I was
Alright,
gonna
Yusha.
lower it, but I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Wait, I can't unmute him. What the heck? You have to unmute yourself, Yusha.
Of course.
I know. I just
You sound like a robot.
Uh,
What?
I just don't want to cut Manzi off. I mean, Manzi, please don't play the guitar. And guys, I mean, those of you that are here, we appreciate you being here. But at this point, we're just gonna plan out some stuff in the future events. We're gonna discuss some other stuff. But as far as the meeting goes, yes, it has been conducted. Thank you so much for staying. If you want anything, like if you want to discuss anything about the meeting, please feel free to leave a message in the chat, and one of the officers will get to you. And last thing, check out the website. If you want to write a blog, feel free to reach out to any of the officers. That's about it.
You said if you want anything.
Yeah, I said if you want to. No.
All right. Anyways.
Did you
Okay, so
just say
tomorrow,
right
tomorrow at 4, right? That's the event.
Tomorrow at 4 we start, but the screening is at 4:30. So you
Okay.
have 30 minutes to be there.
Okay. So I'll see y'all at 6.
Not unless
So we see you at
Wait. Before, now that I think about it, how are we gonna screen it?
here, cut the recording.
Cut the
Okay,
recording and
cutting.
kick everyone
I
out.
mean, Orlando,